Alright, welcome to my video. My name is Eckogen. We'll be going over the mechanics for the Great Thrall in Temple of Eluvium, 12-man. So to start the fight, we have people from Party 1 initiate the fight, as the boss will apply Hellfire to the 3 furthest people. And as the tank, you cannot ever get Hellfire, or it's a wipe. So I wait for about 5 seconds before going in. And so Hellfire is a buff that lasts for 45 seconds and will kill you when it expires. The only way to cleanse it is to enter soul space. Alright, so when the boss does Time Distortion, this is when his CC bars open. You can do KD first and then stun, or stun first and then KD. Just be consistent with whatever CC pattern you're going with. So for the first Time Distortion, we're going to do KD. So the knockdown triggers the boss to send people into and out of soul space. So to get into soul space, if you're on the outside, you need to look at the boss when he gets back up. So he'll send you into soul space. And then if you're in soul space, when the boss gets up, he'll send you out of soul space. So that's how you get in and out of soul space. And the tank never goes into soul space. So entire parties at a time will go into soul space. So we just rotate parties for soul space. So party 1 will go in first, and then when they go out, party 2 will go in for their place. And we just repeat this. So it'll be party 1 in, and then out, party 2 in, and then party 2 out, and then party 1 goes in. This just ensures that there's enough people to take the Hellfire buff, which cleanses when you enter soul space. And it just makes sure that the tank does not get it either. And you also want to have enough people outside to do CCs. When you are in soul space, your CCs do not count. Alright, so that is his second Time Distortion. So because we're following the pattern of KD for first Time Distortion and then stun for second Time Distortion, this is where you do your stun. If you miss the CC here, it's not too crucial because he'll just do a punishment for missing the CC. The important CC here is to do the knockdowns because you need to get people in and out of soul space. If people are in soul space for too long, they'll automatically die, just like Boss 2 in Black Tower. Alright, so the boss will vocalize and there will be a text that says burn away. So this signals the impending Waveform attack, which is an AoE attack that hits and hurts only people in soul space. So when the Great Thrall says burn away, you'll see it clench its fist in the air. He's going to follow up with a double swipe attack. And then he's going to do an uppercut attack. So immediately after that uppercut attack, that's when he applies Waveform to the people in soul space. So it's like a big AoE that flashes. So it doesn't instantly kill people in soul space, but it does do a lot of damage. So use that timing of the uppercut to do your party iframes. That right there, so that is his punishment attacks as you've been seeing before. So the Great Thrall's punishment is very similar to the Raven King in Black Tower. When he has one arm in the air, that means he's going to do punishment on the inside and then outside. When he has two arms in the air, it's going to be outside and then inside. So remember that when you're doing the knockdown, the party in soul space needs to look at the boss, so that way they get sent out. Tank faces away. Party 2 is also looking at the boss because they want to get sent in. And remember to do stun on the second time distortion, or KD if you're doing stun first and then KD. It's just depending on your CC pattern. Alright, so there's the burn away signal. So remember that he's going to do burn away, he'll clench his fist, do double swipe, and then uppercut. Immediately after that uppercut, that's when waveform happens. So this is pretty much the only thing people need to watch out for in Soul Space. So there's a double swipe, followed by the uppercut, and then waveform happens. Okay, so that move right there, that's punishment, so that's going to happen on the outside and then inside. And then remember, on Time Distortion, it's always a rotating CC, so if you do stun for, or if you do KD first and then stun, and then always keep that pattern. So because we're back at the KD pattern, we're knocking him down. Tank looks away, Party 2 looks at the boss because they're in soul space and they need to get out, and then Party 1 needs to look at the boss so that way they get sent in. That's outside punishment, and then inside. Now we do stun. Alright, so when this message appears, the Wraithwell core has been reset. What happens here is you can see, if you look at the map, there are 6 cores that are active, so to say. The boss will apply a tracer buff on the tank and fire a 120-degree trace field at the tank 6 times. You essentially want this trace field to touch all of the cores, which will convert them and causes them to damage the boss. The majority of the damage comes from this trace mechanic, and the trace field itself is harmless to the tank, but it instantly kills anyone who touches it that's not in soul space. Those who are in soul space and then get hit by the trace field, they just suffer heavy damage. So as far as positioning and moving the trace field goes, there are multiple ways to tackle this, so I'll describe the way that we did it. So how we did it was that, so I stayed at 2 o'clock, and the party members are all at 12 o'clock. So once the first trace hits at 2 o'clock, it will turn the 2 cores dark. I then move to 6 o'clock, and then the next trace field is going to hit these 2 cores, and they're going to turn them dark as well. So when I get to 6 o'clock, this is when I tell the raid members to go to the 2 o'clock position. And then remember that as you're moving around, the boss is still doing his normal attack pattern, so you still need to watch out for the punishments. And CCs still need to happen. So at 10 o'clock, that's where I stop for the remainder of the trace cores. And that will cover all of them. So if you do it correctly, you'll see the message that says all Wraithwell cores have gone dark and are now attacking the Great Thrall. So as I mentioned before, this is where most of the damage is inflicted on the boss. Now, when he does the trace mechanics, we actually skip the stun portion. For the reason why we skip it is because there are times where it can cause the trace mechanic to bug out and he will not do any trace. So that is why we skip stun, just as a safety thing so it doesn't bug out and not apply trace fields. So remember that if you do miss the CCs, he will do a punishment right after. Alright, so when this message appears, he's going to do the trace phase again. So for this next mechanic, I just move counterclockwise. So for the first trace, it hits at 10 o'clock. I then move to 6 o'clock, and then the raid party shifts from 2 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Once trace hits 6 o'clock, I go to 2 o'clock and then stay here for the remainder. So if you do it correctly, all cores will go dark and they will damage the boss. Now, at any time, you can move back to cover any cores that weren't touched by the trace field. Because he's firing it 6 times, there's no punishment or anything to backtrack and, cover any core that you miss. So, for example, if I, need to go back to the core at 11 o'clock, I need to tell the party to move accordingly based on that. Just remember to communicate to your raid so they can move based on where you're moving for the trace cores, or for the trace fields. Alright, so they've been reset. First trace field, 2 o'clock. I then move to 6 o'clock. I tell the party to then move to 2 o'clock. And that's inner punishment. And then outer. And then I move to 10 o'clock. And that will cover the last core there. And now they're going to damage the boss. That's inner punishment. Remember that punishment is always random. So you do punishment again, so it's inner. And then outer. Course have been reset, so I just move counterclockwise. So 10 o'clock is done. I move to 6 o'clock. The party from 2 o'clock now move to 12 o'clock. Watch out for punishment. Do a knockdown. Remember that tank always looks away, and you always rotate parties in and out into soul space. Then as a tank, it's also very important to always get back within melee range when you're avoiding the punishments. Because if you're tanking the boss and you're further than 10 meters, he will pretty much instantly kill you, just kind of like Raven King does. Alright, so he's doing the trace again, so 2 o'clock is done. I move to 6, party then moves to 2, and then move to 10 o'clock. So that just makes sure the trace do not hit the party members. Okay, so at 12%, it will say the Great Thrall is out of control. So this will stop the trace mechanics, and the boss is only going to do normal attack patterns until he's dead. So soul space mechanics should still be done, and continue to follow your CC patterns. And then since the trace mechanic is completed, you can go back to stunning the boss again. Remember, you can see right there, the boss has done the burn away. So he clenched his fists, he did double swipe. Now he's going to do the uppercut, and that's when Waveform happens. So that's when people in soul space need to party protect, or iframe. And remember that the boss still does punishments at 12%, so you still need to watch out for those. And then from here, from 12% and onward, that's just the entire raid DPS. There's no other mechanics that deal damage to him, so it's all up to your party DPS to finish the boss. So he's doing burn away again. So there's a double swipe. There's going to be uppercut, and then he's going to do waveform to the people within soul space. That's inner punishment, and then outer. Remember that if you miss your CCs, he will immediately follow up with a punishment. So remember that this punishment here that he's doing, 2 arms in the air, so he'll do outer and then inner. And that's pretty much all he had to do. It's the same pattern he does over and over. So there we go. That is how you do the Great Thrall in 12-man. I will post the mechanics in the video description below. If you have any questions, please ask. Thanks for watching. I hope that helped.